Good evening. You're watching the news at 7:30 on ATV. I'm Anne Reesom.
And I'm Emily Stu. Here's a look at tonight's top stories.
CY Leung denies setting up office for re-election campaign with Beijing's backing, saying it's too early.
Opposition continues as government clears first electrical hurdle in landfill expansion and incinerator plans.
ESF hits parents again with nearly 6% rise in school fees starting September. Leung Chun-ying has dismissed reports that he's planning to run for a second term as chief executive and has already set up a re-election campaign office with Beijing's blessings.
While he did not rule himself out of the 2017 race, Leung insisted today that it's too early and he wants to focus on his policy pledges first. Wrapping up his two-day visit to neighboring Guangdong, Leung Chun-ying responded to reports today that he's planning to run for a second term as chief executive. While he did not rule himself out of the race in 2017, he insisted that it's too early to think about it.
I concentrate on delivering the pledges in my election manifesto. I am not at this stage addressing the question of re-election. After all, I've only served 1/3 of my five-year term.
Leung dismissed claims that he's already set up an office to prepare for his re-election campaign, reportedly to be headed by his top aide, Executive Councillor Fanny Law and Leonie Key, the deputy director of his first campaign. Law and Key also denied it. That's after the Chinese-language Oriental Daily newspaper today published a front-page spread quoting a credible source as saying the central government wants Leung to run for the city's top job again in 2017. The article said Beijing wants Leung to stay as chief executive until 2022 because he is passionate, reliable, capable, and always stands by the Love China, Love Hong Kong principle. The central government reportedly hopes Leung's re-election will help maintain the city's political stability and avoid chaos that may erupt when he is replaced. But the report claims in order to be re-elected and sustain effective governance, Leung must be determined to get rid of incapable people in his cabinet. Since Leung came to power in July 2012, one minister, one undersecretary, 3 political assistants, and 2 executive councillors were either forced to step down or resign voluntarily. The chief executive today came to their defense, saying that it's because of his administrative team that he was able to implement the policies included in his manifesto. While scandal has dogged his cabinet and public and political opposition is bogging down some of his key policy moves, Leung's supporters argue that he has also taken some bold, if populist, steps. These include his measures to ease poverty, provide more affordable housing, and stop mainland mothers from abusing public hospital services. Despite that, there has been persistent speculation that Beijing is concerned about his plunging popularity and the deepening social divide. When asked today about LegCo President Zhang Yuxing's claim yesterday that a mainland official had told him Beijing is willing to accept a non-patriotic but popular candidate to run for the city's top job, Leung played it safe.
I'm sure the central authority stands on the question of universal suffrage election of the next chief executive has remained the same ever since the basic law has been promulgated.
The chief executive again urged all 70 lawmakers to accept his invitation for a 2-day trip to Shanghai next month to discuss political reform with senior mainland officials. His call came as LegCo's House Committee approved the proposed itinerary to reserve half a day for discussions on constitutional development and the rest for tours to see Shanghai's infrastructure and latest developments. 37 voted yes, while 3 voted no, with the budget for each legislator to be set at $7,800. Undecided Pan-Democrats have until Monday to make their final decision before the chief executive's office books flights. But with Leung still unable to guarantee an exclusive meeting between the Pan-Democrats and Beijing officials, the chances of all 70 lawmakers attending this ice-breaking trip are not looking good. More than a dozen Pan-Democrats are on hunger strike in a stepped-up campaign to demand genuine universal suffrage in the next chief executive election.
The protest is taking place outside HSBC's headquarters, and the banking giant has warned the hunger strikers that they face eviction. ATV's Raymond Yeung reports.
There was plenty of noise outside HSBC's headquarters in Central this afternoon as Pan-Democrats began a hunger strike to press for genuine universal suffrage in the 2017 chief executive poll. The first wave of strikers is made up of 17 district councillors and lawmakers, including the Democratic Party's Albert Ho and Wu Chi-wai, and Lee Cheuk-yen and Sid Ho from the Labour Party. Political heavyweights Emily Lau and Alan Leung turned up in a show of support. The hunger strikers had to undergo a medical checkup to ensure that the fast will not endanger their health.
We are not expecting that we can touch Beijing by going on hunger strike, but we hope that we can touch the people of Hong Kong to understand that now it is time to act. Now is the time to struggle for true democracy.
The Pan-Democrats believe that mainland officials have become more vocal in recent days because they want to lay down conditions for the chief executive race.
Over the past month, we have always heard from many of the Chinese government officials that they want to screen out. They don't want true democracy for Hong Kong.
The hunger strikers did not say when they will end their action, but expect more people to join their ranks in what they see as a preview of the plan by the Occupy Central movement to block the streets of the city's business hub. But while that protest is planned for July, the hunger strikers have a more immediate concern. HSBC has warned them that they are occupying private property and the banking giant may take legal action. Security was visibly beefed up at the bank's entrance in preparation for the protest, and the gates, which are normally open, were closed today. Raymond Yang, ATV News.
The government has won the first round of its battle for LegCo approval of a $27 billion plan to expand the city's 3 landfills and build an incinerator.
Lawmakers had urged the authorities to table the 4 items as separate funding requests to ensure fairness, but the government is insisting on a single package. Zhang Guanhou residents and district councillors led by New Democrat lawmaker Gary Fan took their protest to new heights this morning, arriving in LegCo in a truck carrying a crane to ensure that their message was heard. They unfurled a gigantic banner demanding that instead of expanding the Zhang Guanhou landfill, the government should ditch it altogether. The unusual protest came as the government sought LegCo approval for its 3+1 waste disposal plan, a $27.6 billion project to expand the city's 3 landfills and build a massive incinerator in Shekuchao between Lantau and Chengchao. But lawmakers, speaking at a public meeting of the Environmental Affairs panel this morning, said the 4 items should be tabled separately. Fan, who supports building an incinerator but rejects landfill enlargement, said it's not fair to bundle all 4 projects into one package. Transport sector lawmaker Frankie Yek from the pro-business Liberal Party agreed with Fan, noting that public opinion on expanding the rubbish dumps is divided. Interested parties also voiced their concerns.
I am certainly opposed to the Shekuchao incinerator proposal. Many of the islands within the Pearl River Delta, which Lantau is the largest, should be looked at as Hong Kong's last very valuable open space and recreational resource. If the government fails to achieve approval to fund landfill extensions, Hong Kong will likely have no choice but to either export waste, which is an expensive proposition, or the alternative of facing the reality of a complete breakdown of the current waste management system in Hong Kong.
Despite the heated debate, the 3+1 package was approved by the panel after winning the support of the pro-establishment DAB. Speaking after the meeting, Environment Minister Wong Kum Sing insisted all 4 projects have to be considered together.
For the proposed incinerator in Shekuchao, the possible completion time would be around 2022, and it will only handle about 1/3 of our total municipal solid wastes. So, before its completion, we still need the landfills to be extended to cater for the public hygiene related issues. I mean the waste collection and disposal requirement. So these 3+1 are must for Hong Kong.
The package next goes to the Public Works Subcommittee for discussion next month. Last year, Wong was forced to shelve plans to expand all 3 landfills after massive opposition from residents and lawmakers. The plan to build an incinerator is also in limbo, as some Chengchao residents are challenging the bid in court.
The English Schools Foundation is hitting parents with a fee increase of up to nearly 6% from September, saying it has to catch up with inflation.
About 17,000 students will have to pay an average of 4.9% more, the third increase in 3 years. Here's Raymond Yang.
Education at Hong Kong's international schools is not cheap, especially for parents paying fees to the English Schools Foundation. Now, for the third year in a row, they're facing another substantial increase in school fees. From September, they'll have to dig deeper into their pockets if their children study in any of the 21 institutions run by the ESF. Primary school fees, currently at $70,000 a year, will rise to $74,100, an increase of 5.9% or $410 more per month. Year 7 to 11 students, now paying $101,400, will see their fees go up by 4.2% to $105,700, while those in years 12 and 13, now paying $106,000, will be charged $111,100, up 4.5%. The average increase of 4.9% is the same as last year, while in 2012 fees went up by 5%. About 17,000 students will be affected by the adjustment. The ESF today described the increase as moderate, saying it's necessary for the foundation to fall in line with rising market costs, or inflation, which currently stands at 4.3%. But an even sharper hike may be introduced in 2016, when the government begins phasing out its annual subvention of $280 million to the ESF. Parents who currently benefit from the scheme will be hardest hit, with fees expected to rise by as much as 23%. Many parents are worried they won't be able to afford it, but there's nothing they can do to prevent higher bills from international education for their children. Raymond Yang, ATV News.
Australian authorities say the search for a missing Malaysia Airlines plane was shifted 1,100 kilometers to a different part of the Indian Ocean.
Officials decided to move the search after receiving a new credible lead about the jet's most likely last movements.
Australian authorities, leading the multinational hunt for the missing Malaysia Airlines Boeing 777, moved their search north today after receiving new information on where debris may be located. The Australian Maritime Safety Authority, or AMSA, said the fresh information from Malaysian investigators indicated the plane did not fly as far south as previously thought when it disappeared from radar en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on the 8th of March.
The AMSA search for any sign of the missing Malaysia Airlines flight MH370 has been shifted to an area north, following advice from the Australian Transport Safety Bureau. An international air crash investigation team in Malaysia provided updated advice to the ATSB, which has examined the information and determined an area 1,100 kilometres to the northeast of the existing search area is now the most credible lead as to where debris may be located.
That means the huge, isolated stretches of water that ships and planes had combed in the southern Indian Ocean for more than a week, and where various satellites detected objects that might be debris from the missing plane, are no longer of interest.
This is the normal business of search and rescue operations, that new information comes to light, refined analyses take you to a different place. I don't count the original work a waste of time.
China is actively involved in the hunt for debris because 154 of the 239 people on board were Chinese nationals. 4 aircraft reached the new area today as bad weather that had suspended the search yesterday cleared.
That the new search area, although more focused than before, remains considerable, and that the search conditions, although easier than before, remain challenging.
Aviation experts say the crucial moment for understanding the flight revolves around the period during which its communication systems were disabled, and it took a sharp turn westward before flying silently for about 7 hours. Although the flight data will have survived thanks to its black box data recorder, the discussion in the cockpit immediately after the flight lost contact with air traffic control will have been overwritten, unless power to the recorder was lost at the same time. The black box sends out a ping activated by immersion in water that can be picked up by a microphone and a signal analyzer from about 1 kilometre away. However, the battery of the pinger on MH370 only lasts for 30 days, which means the detector will have just 2 days to find the black box before the battery runs out.
After the 30-day period is concerned, we are now looking at the possibility of deep-sea surveillance, search and salvage. But as I keep reminding everybody, we've had an occasion with the Air France crash, which took nearly 2 years to find the black box.
Today's sudden change of geographic focus is the latest twist in an investigation that has so far failed to establish why the plane flew dramatically off course or exactly where it ended up.
Still to come on ATV's main news tonight. Top pollster tells his pro-government critics that popularity can't be bought.
Leading to meet Serena Williams in Miami final in clash between world's top 2 women players.